Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. We do want to continue on with our top stories that we're following today, and we're still following up on several international stories as well. I do want to put this up on your screen. This is a statement that we have there from Pete Hegseth. Of course, he is the Defense Secretary. Earlier today, he was speaking there at the President Trump's cabinet meeting talking about the Iran threat. And so ultimately, we do know that U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said today that the U.S. military will be prepared to carry out whatever President Trump decides on Iran to ensure that Tehran does not pursue nuclear weapons capability. With a large U.S. military force that is now gathered there in the region, Hegseth was asked by Trump at the cabinet meeting to comment on that situation. And of course, we do know that this all comes after this statement that we saw here from President Trump just yesterday. He put this on his Truth Social account, saying a massive armada is now headed to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose. It is a larger fleet headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. Then that's sent to Venezuela. Like Venezuela, it is ready, willing, and able to rapidly fulfill its mission with the speed and violence if necessary. Hopefully, Iran will quickly, quote, come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons, one that is good for all parties. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. They didn't, and there was an Operation Midnight Hammer, a major destruction of Iran. The next attack will be far worse. Don't make that happen again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And so, of course, as President Trump is now speaking out, we do know that we're going to continue to follow this situation, getting the latest updates. And so now I'd like to bring into the conversation Stephen Cook with the Council on Foreign Relations. Stephen, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks. Pleasure to be with you.
Well, let's start with the very basics. We know that President Trump has gone back and forth over the past 2 weeks or so on his rhetoric on Iran and what he plans to do there in the region. Of course, this statement coming out on Truth Social just yesterday, and Hegseth sort of backing up those claims that the U.S. is now ready for whatever, especially as it pertains to any military strikes there in the region. I have to ask you, what is leading to this shift in how he's talking?
Well, the entire episode is somewhat curious, especially the president's emphasis in his Truth Social post about Iran's nuclear weapons. If you go back to this past summer and Operation Midnight Hammer, which he referenced in that post, the president had declared that Iran's nuclear program had been totally destroyed. We are at this place because the president had vowed to protect Iranian protesters who, over the course of the last month, have risen up against the Islamic regime. And the Islamic regime has responded with heavy caliber weaponry, killing thousands of people in the streets. We have now gone from protecting those protesters to either a deal on Iran's nuclear program or military action. I think that with the amount of military force in the region, I think we are getting to a point where either Iran is going to have to climb down and make some sort of deal, or the president is going to have to use military force. I can't imagine him backing down at this point.
And so we're seeing some video footage here. Of course, this is similar to what we expect could potentially be there near the region of Iran as he's talking about some of those things that are in place. I also, though, here, Stephen, want to see your reaction as we talked about Pete Hegseth speaking out. I'm going to play out this for you here on Live Now.
With Iran right now, ensuring that they have all the options to make a deal. They should not pursue nuclear capabilities. We will be prepared to deliver whatever this president expects with Iran right now.
All right, as you heard there, he says that they're willing to bring whatever the president does expect. When you're listening to that from Pete Hegseth, does that match pretty much what the president has been hoping that would be said by a member of his cabinet in this position?
Well, of course, Secretary of Defense Hegseth is echoing what the president's policy is here. And I think he's making clear that with the significant amount of military force in the region, the United States is well prepared to try to disarm the Iranians, whether it is their nuclear program or their ballistic missile program, which is also a very significant threat to U.S. partners in the region.
And so as we're continuing to look forward as well, we know that President Trump, even in that statement, talked about previous military operations that had been done in Iran. Of course, we know that this did severely impact their ability to have nuclear power. Do you know if there are any other key targets that he's specifically looking at in the country?
Well, the United States over the summer in Operation Midnight Hammer did do a significant amount of damage to Iran's main nuclear sites. Of course, we don't have a clear and understanding of how durable that damage is. So those areas, those facilities will be targeted once again. Although I suspect that a lot of this discussion about disarming the Iranians and destroying their nuclear program is really cover for going after regime targets. The leadership of the Islamic Republic, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which has been involved in the violence in the streets, as well as what's known as the Basij militia, which has also been involved in killing large numbers of Iranians in the streets. With the amount of firepower the United States has in the region, this military operation may not look quite like the one over last summer, which was essentially a one and done. This may be much larger with a broader set of targets than what we saw in Operation Midnight Hammer.
And so, of course, we're looking there at the screen, just some video footage, of course, President Trump and the supreme leader there in the Iranian country. I have to ask you, yet another country that has a lot of influence there in the region, of course, is Israel. Israel and the United States are allies, as Israel and Iran have a very strained relationship, just to put it nicely. I have to ask you here, Stephen, do you think that Israel has any influence ultimately on the decision that President Trump will make as he moves forward?
Israeli officials have said that they are taking a back seat here and that it is entirely up to the president of the United States. It's true that the Israeli intelligence chief is in Washington today. Undoubtedly, a potential strike on Iran is part of the conversations that he is having with his American counterparts. But this will be an American show. Of course, if the Iranians retaliate by attacking Israel, as they have vowed to do, you can expect to see a very significant Israeli response.
And so as we're still looking ahead, we've heard the remarks there from Secretary Hegseth as well as President Trump. I have to ask you, are there any tea leaves, anything that Americans can be on the lookout for that might tip their hand to let us know what potentially could happen there in the region if the president will choose to strike militarily?
Well, it's very hard with this president because he says that he relies mostly on his gut, and it's very, very hard to get any insight into the president's gut. But I will say this, with the large amount of forces, the massive amount of forces, it would be odd for the president not to use it when he has it at his disposal.
All right, and so we've been talking here with Stephen Cook with the Council on Foreign Relations. Stephen, anything that we missed, anything else that we didn't cover as we're looking at the U.S. and Iran as they are still sort of now posturing against each other?
Yeah, I think one point that is worth mentioning is that in all of this discussion about a negotiation and a deal, many in the Iranian opposition are actually opposed to a deal because they believe it gives a lifeline to a terrible regime that is responsible for economic ruin, mass corruption, and now mass death. And they would prefer there not to be a negotiation because it would allow this regime to slip from the noose around which the Iranian people have had them and which President Trump vowed to bring down in response to the violence against the Iranian people.
And of course, we know that the Iranian military today also said that they are prepared to, quote, immediately retaliate against a U.S. attack. That's according to Tehran's top diplomat as well. So we'll continue to stay on top of this story here on Live Now from Fox. Stephen, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.